Hello, hello! Welcome to Accio Politics. We are a Harry Potter reread podcast focusing on politics in the wizarding world. As always, I'm Adri, your host and recovering English major.
And I'm Helene, your co-host and producer.
How are you, Helene?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little tired. I got shot a few times yesterday, so
A vaccine, right? Like,
yes,
let's be real here.
multiple vaccines. 3 in total. So I have 2 sore arms and lots of puncture wounds. So that's me.
Okay, all right. I guess we're doing life updates now. My daughter, the lovely Olivia Wilson, has started on food. So we used the high chair that you and friend of the podcast, Rex, got us from our registry.
Yay! That's exciting.
And she's very excited about food. She does this thing, Helene, where she like giggles in between bites. It's the cutest thing. And I was like, yes, same girl. Like, I love eating too.
This is what food is? This is what I've been missing the whole time?
The whole time? What?
She goes, I get to look forward to eating food for the rest of my life? What? It's so exciting.
Yeah, like, wait until you have pizza, girl. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is just sweet potato. This is nothing.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
She goes like, it's the cutest thing.
Oh, little baby. So sweet.
Yeah, so that's it. Oh, and also the dogs are far more interested in her now because she's got food all over her face and her hands. And they're like, what? This is useful to me now? You know? So
yeah, makes sense.
That's life update. But today we're not here to talk about baby food or vaccines. We are here to talk about Chapter 13, the Muggle-born Registration Commission of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows.
Heck yeah. Not not brightest and bubbliest chapter of them all, though, I'll tell you that.
What are you talking about? What about all the ruffles, you know?
I know. So, if in case you have forgotten, this is the one where, after successfully infiltrating the Ministry of Magic in disguise, the trio are split up and Harry is stuck looking for the locket alone in Umbridge's office. Having no luck locating the Horcrux, Harry eventually makes it down to the courtroom to find Hermione and Umbridge, only to start attacking a bit prematurely and then having to race to get out of the Ministry before they all seal the exits. That was interesting. And then the trio managed to escape, thankfully, but are unfortunately followed by Yaxley, who does seem to latch on to their apparition on the way out. And to be continued on how that affects the plot of the book, but I'm sure we all know.
Plot twists left and right. Well. That was a jam-packed chapter that was very beautiful and light and not at all dark and dementor-ridden. When you read this chapter, Helene, what politic came to mind?
You know, I decided to go with propaganda for this one.
What?
There were a few that were in the running, but I didn't really feel like there was going to be a better opportunity to discuss propaganda than in this chapter.
All right. I can see that. So let's talk about propaganda.
Yeah, so the definition of propaganda, in case you need a little refresher, is propaganda is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, that is used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. So it's basically politically charged marketing is a good way to think about it. So obviously, the main example in this chapter of propaganda are the pamphlets that Umbridge's office, otherwise known as the Muggle-born Registration Commission, are making. And so they're a prime example of a really politically charged propaganda that is being created mostly to incite fear in the wizarding community, as well as spread misinformation, which and like further incites fear. And then obviously it is meant to further a specific political agenda, aka the Death Eaters' political agenda of ridding the Wizarding World of Muggleborns and Mudbloods. So that's like the big propaganda in this chapter. But we also see the introduction of the undesirable number one posters that are created. Actually, I think this is the first time we see them in the book. I can't remember if they're brought up earlier, but basically they're the poster of Harry's face hanging up in Umbridge's office, and this poster, which is like plastered all over the Wizarding World, is basically propaganda to, get the Wizarding World to believe that Harry is a criminal, that he has done something wrong, and then also to kind of weaponize the community as a means to capture him by offering that prize of getting him and bringing him to the ministry or whatever it is that they are saying to do. Those are pretty big ones. And then one that I saw, but could be arguable, is Rita's memoir of Dumbledore is also featured in this chapter. Harry comes across it in Umbridge's office when he's going through her belongings. And I thought it was interesting because like I think we're technically like not aware of Rita's like political leanings. Like we're pretty sure she's not a Death Eater, right? She's not a Death Eater, but like
Pretty sure.
yeah,
Sure.
like she did write that expose for the Quibbler, like with Harry's interview, although very very reluctantly. In what was it, the fifth book?
Yeah.
And so, like, obviously, if she was a Death Eater, she probably would have like been killed for doing that, honestly. But, but so like, she's not a Death Eater, but we don't know that she's not like a Death Eater like sympathizer, that she doesn't have those same values.
We don't know that she's not complicit. I think
right.
is what we're thinking, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, we don't know, like, is she pureblood? And if she is, does she have a bias? Like, does she have a prejudice against Muggles and Muggleborns? Like, we don't know these things about Rita, as far as I'm aware. And so, like, I'm wondering what she might stand to gain out of spreading, like, this really harmful misinformation and, like, negative propaganda against Dumbledore in this book, right? Like, and
You
because
mean other than
Dumbledore...
money?
Yes, well, there's obviously money, but like, like Dumbledore, not only was he like a famous wizard in the Wizarding World, but he was like a figurehead for like the resistance, for like the fight against Voldemort. He was like knowingly in, like, everyone knew that he was like this like symbolism of like everything that is the opposite of Voldemort, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, so to write this book that disparages his name, makes him seem like a bad person, and like spreads all these lies and misinformation about him, like, is there a political goal from that other than just making money and book sales? Like, is there a goal politically? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say that she is complicit in the same way like we think like about Jared and Ivanka Trump as being complicit. Yes, I do believe that they also are like, white supremacists, but like
Right.
more so in the money grabbing way, like I'm just looking for opportunities to position myself ways and not do I truly believe this.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know. I mean, I obviously hate Rita. She's a very hateable character in the series. I
Correct.
do not enjoy her. But I do think it would be interesting to learn a bit more about her background, her like the like reason that she approaches things. I don't even know if we know for sure what house she was in.
I don't think it's textually like canonically in the books.
Yeah, like I think I read something a long time ago about maybe her being in Slytherin, and like her I think maybe she like went to school around the same time as Umbridge, maybe. And so like it's
Mm-hmm.
possible that they like were in a house together or something. I could be making that up. I'm remembering wrong, but um, I
But
don't
I don't
know.
think
Like,
there's textual evidence to that effect
yeah, not
of
like
like,
in the book, 7 books at least.
yeah,
If
correct.
it's anywhere, it's
That's what I
probably
mean.
yeah. If it's anywhere, it's probably like on wizardingworld.com or Pottermore or whatever.
Formerly
So
Pottermore, yes.
yeah,
Or yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I guess like it could be argued that her memoir isn't propaganda, but with the like, political meaning behind Dumbledore and like who he is and who he stands for, like what he stands for and all of that. Like Dumbledore's just a very political figure, right? And like so it stands to reason that if you're going to write a disparaging memoir about a political figure, like it's just kind of common sense to me that like there might be some political motivations behind that.
Yeah. Or like a lot of the like royal biographers do, they sometimes just do it because it is a public figure and the interest is there, and like, hey, money, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean it's also possible. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. So that's propaganda. This chapter's chock full of it, but that's what I was able to glean from it. What about you? What was the politic you decided to go for this
Well,
chapter?
before we get to my politic, I also want to say that there's just because you make money out of something doesn't mean you're not interested in propaganda, right? Like we know from like the last administration that like fake news and like all these websites and even like Fox News, they make money from their propaganda.
Yeah.
So like they are completely cynical about it and they completely capitalize on it. So just because Rita is entirely motivated by greed, right? That doesn't make her any less culpable. In fact, it makes her even worse in my eyes, right? Like
Well,
to me, like,
if she is motivated by greed, yes, yeah. We don't
yeah,
know, but yeah,
yeah. But just I wanted to put that out there.
yeah, totally agreed.
The way my politic intersects with yours is interesting because I feel like my politic is propaganda from the author.
Okay, okay, okay.
So my politic is the politic of femininity, and the way that the author uses anything that is coded as girly or feminine as quote unquote bad, like not quote unquote bad, like actually bad, right? So like we have like the pink flyers, like the rose being smothered by the weeds as like this coded thing with the propaganda, and it's like it's very feminine image, right? Like the roses. And we're supposed to be like really like baffled that this is the imagery that is being used, right? Like Umbridge being covered in ruffles, the sticky note with like pink sticky note with the cat, the fluffy cats, like the doilies in Umbridge's decor. Her cat, Fluffy Patronus, who is very ineffective, but only for like everyone else, not her. Her
Yeah,
her use of jewelry, and by her I mean Umbridge's, to bolster her status, and her insistence on decorum, like she's just like, if you're not polite, I will feed you to the mentors, basically. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
she's not aggressive, and she's very feminine in everything that she does, and we're supposed to like hate her for it, or it's like it's supposed to be a coded word, a coded thing about like she is so insidiously feminine. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
and that is the politic that I'm interested in.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before
Oh
in like
yes, we have.
in other contexts. I mean, I agree with you on this. Like it's pretty obvious that at least in the case of like people like Umbridge and even Rita, like we talked about previously, and like Cho, it's obvious that like really feminine attributes are really like demonized, villainized, looked down upon, and then like women who don't act really girly are like praised, like Hermione.
Yeah, well, and the entire
And
we
Ginny.
can get into it after the quote, you know, but
Yeah.
like this entire chapter also is predicated on femininity in other ways, in kind of like the female, you know, Muggle-born, who is kind of almost sacrificed to the Dementors, and then she like runs to Ron, who she thinks is her husband, and is
Yeah.
like, we need to get the kids out of here, you know, that kind of stuff. So there's like a lot of femininity in this chapter, but like what we think of like as stock femininity, as in the color pink, like fluffy cats, you know, all these like cutesy things, like it's just so insidiously terrible, and we're supposed as readers to be revolted by it.
Yeah, it's kind of like because obviously, like toxic masculinity is a thing, right? It's a phrase that
Yeah, so
exists.
it's
Yes,
insidious femininity.
yeah. I'm like, this is kind of like the author's way of like trying to make toxic femininity like a thing. Like it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah. Stop trying to make fetch happen.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So, what was your quote for propaganda?
Yeah, my quote for propaganda was as such. Harry crept closer, although the workers were so intent on what they were doing that he doubted that they would notice a carpet muffled footstep, and he slid a completed pamphlet from the pile beside the young witch. He examined it beneath the invisibility cloak. Its pink cover was emblazoned with a golden title, Mudbloods and the Dangers They Pose to a Peaceful Pureblood Society. Beneath the title was a picture of a red rose with a simpering face in the middle of its petals, being strangled by a green weed with fangs and a scowl. So, I mean, obviously, this is just like describing the main piece of propaganda that we see in the chapter that I went over. But it's like I think it really illustrates the use of not only like language that is inciting fear, right? Like the dangers they pose to a peaceful pureblood society. Like the language that it uses makes the pureblood makes like them feel like the victim, right? Like, oh, we're
Of course, of
peaceful,
course.
and like we're a peaceful society. We're not doing anything wrong. And these, sorry, my cat is being annoying. So we're not doing anything wrong.
Is your cat being insidiously feminine?
It's Albus, who is a male kitty. So I mean, that
But
doesn't
he's
mean
a
he can't
fluffy
be
kitty.
feminine. Yeah, it doesn't mean he can't be feminine, but he's not being feminine. I'll tell you. He's trying to take up space and like insert his like opinion
he's
where he's
he's
trying to cat explain me right now. Okay.
is he cat spreading?
Yeah, exactly. Um, but yes, like the language is very much so like a inciting hatred and fear by making the purebloods look like the victims. But then also, obviously, the imagery that is described here is also very fear inciting. It's like, oh, the purebloods are this beautiful red rose, and like these weeds are coming in with first of all, a red rose with a simpering face. Like, I don't even know what that. I probably have to look up what a simpering
A
face is.
simpering is like also a very feminine term, by the
Yeah,
way.
I'm like, what the fuck is a simpering face? I'm gonna look it up. Affectedly coy or ingratiating. She's
Again,
clearly not a simpering
feminine.
female who can be pushed on. Okay, yeah, so very feminine. Yeah, very feminine word. But
I mean, the weed is the aggressor here, you know? Like, it's
yes,
like we must protect the rose at all costs, you know?
yes, exactly. And the wording here being the Rose is being strangled by a green weeds with fangs and a scowl. So it's like villainizing, demonizing, grr, with the fangs
Also,
and the
I
scowl.
mean, and we can't also ignore the fact that an English rose is an actual phrase in the UK for describing a woman, like a white woman.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
I mean that this is where our politics get combined.
Yeah. This is definitely a very feminine leaning piece of propaganda. At least the one that was highlighted
Well,
in
it's
my
also
quote.
pink, you know?
Yeah, it's a
The
pink
pamphlets are
pamphlet.
pink.
Yeah, pink pamphlet. Big golden words, and then the rose, and it's a whole thing. So yeah, that's my propaganda quote. What about I wouldn't be surprised. Okay. So our quotes don't overlap. I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised if our quotes overlapped, but they don't.
They do not, but only because I was like, maybe the pink flyer is too on the nose for mine. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, so this is my quote. It's quite long, so I apologize in advance. Umbridge laughed a soft, girlish laugh that made Harry want to attack her. She
Oh,
leaned
there we go.
forward over the barrier, the better to observe her victim, and something gold swung forward too and dangled over the void. The locket. Hermione had seen it. She let out a little squeak, but Umbridge and Yaxley, still intent upon their prey, were deaf to everything else. No, said Umbridge. No, I don't think so, Mrs. Cattermole. Wands only choose witches or wizards. You are not a witch. I have your responses to the questionnaire that was sent to you here. Mafalda, please pass them to Mafalda, pass them to me, as if Umbridge would ever say, please. This is a
Yeah.
Adriana set aside. Aside. Umbridge held out a small hand. She looked so toad-like at that moment that Harry was quite surprised not to see webs between the stubby fingers. Hermione's hands were shaking with shock. She fumbled in a pile of documents balanced on the chair beside her, finally withdrawing a sheaf of parchment with Mrs. Cattermole's name on it. That's pretty, Dolores, she said, pointing at the pendant gleaming in the ruffled folds of her Umbridge's blouse. What? Snapped Umbridge, glancing down. Oh, yes. An old family heirloom, she said, patting the locket lying on her large bosom. The stands for Selwyn. I am related to the Selwyns. Indeed, there are few pureblood families to whom I am not related. A pity, she continued in a louder voice, flicking through Mrs. Cattermole's questionnaire, that the same cannot be said for you. Parents' professions. Greengrocers.
Honestly, like your entire quote could have just been the first line of this quote, and it would have been like, "Yep, that is."
Yes, but also I wanted to include the ruffles in the blouse. I
No,
wanted to,
totally. Yeah,
yeah,
like I get why you did the whole thing. It's just like literally after the first line, I was like, "Yep." Umbridge laughed a soft, girlish laugh that made Harry want to attack her. Yep,
yep,
that's it.
yep, that's it. I know. That's it. That's a tweet. But
Yeah,
but like the use not just of like the girlish laugh that incites aggression in our main character who we're supposed to empathize with, right? From the
yeah,
get-go, like we're supposed to also feel that towards her. But the idea of like using jewelry to again bolster her ties to the wizarding world, Hermione drawing attention to the locket by complimenting, which is another feminine way of like transacting in the world. The whole ruffles, the big bosom, like this cartoonish version of femininity, like the small hands and the stubby fingers is more of the author's fat phobia, to be honest with you.
yeah,
And the the whole like I don't know, like mean girl of it all
yeah,
is just made to like for you to reject the femininity that she exudes because it is, like you said, like it's like toxic or insidious.
yeah,
So that's my quote.
yeah. Well,
Who do you think embodies your politic?
yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we picked the same one here, but I went with
Of course.
Umbridge. Yes, I went with
Oh yeah,
Umbridge
same, same,
because
same.
yes. So, like, obviously, the pamphlets are a production of her office. Like she probably came up with these pamphlets and had a lot to do with what went into them and the creation of them and what they said and all of that. And then also the undesirable number one, both, but basically like the undesirable number one poster that we see and the Rita's memoir are all like associated with Umbridge in this chapter. They're all in her office. She is participating in the propaganda. She is using the propaganda to further her political agenda, to incite fear, doing all of the fun stuff that propaganda does. So, Umbridge.
Well, I mean, while I do agree, like Umbridge is my like character for this politic, it was the one that I chose upon our discussion right now. I'm also thinking like, but isn't also Harry really the character that like makes us feel a certain way towards femininity, like because we're kind of also experiencing the book through him. So because we're being like, or even just the narrator, I'm trying to like work through some stuff here. So the narrator is kind of the person who is telling us this work through Harry's mainly experience, right? So he or she, the narrator, is framing the chapter and make it forcing us to focus on certain things like this insidious femininity. There could have been a draft of this chapter, for instance, that didn't focus on any ruffles or whatever, let's say. So yes, while Umbridge is the one displaying the insidious femininity, the narrator is the one framing what we pay attention to and how and why. So I'm just putting that out there.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Well, we've gotten to the point in our episode where we talk about how we see each other's politics in this series. And Helene, I gotta say, propaganda is all over the Harry
Yeah, I
Potter
mean,
series.
kind of already like touched on other areas that we see like your politic. I mean, with Rita, with Cho, a lot in the fifth book we see, like Cho crying a lot and wanting to talk about emotions and all of these things
And
that are
like,
associated with femininity
yeah,
that
and Ginny
like
is like the anti Cho,
yes.
right? Like she's like the cool girl. Like she's athletic,
Yes.
she's
Yeah, like
effortless.
she's more of like a tomboy and that's really celebrated and like obviously Harry really likes that about her that like she doesn't cry, that she, is tough and like,
She
all this
doesn't try
stuff.
hard. Yeah,
Yeah. Um
Petunia Dursley is very feminine.
yes. And then Hermione like she has her areas
She
where she
dabbles.
yes, she dabbles in
She
femininity. She experiments every once in a while. Like at the Yule Ball, she had like got her sleek hair and her beautiful dress and all of that. And like at the wedding, she like cleaned up a little bit and stuff. So like I feel like when the author talks about Hermione's femininity in like those very small instances, like it's more like she's feminine, but not all the time and not aggressively so. So it's okay. You know
Well,
what I
she
mean?
is feminine in the right places. When you're feminine all the time, or you're trying too hard all the time, that's when you're hiding something.
Yeah. And like obviously we see Hermione throughout all the books displaying emotion that like she's a little bit more emotional than Ron and Harry sometimes in certain
I,
in
I mean,
certain circumstances.
more than Harry, if we're being honest, because Ron is emotional as fuck.
Yeah, well like she'll like, let out a whimper or she'll cry
Oh yeah,
at
yeah.
something or like she'll be like she'll show just a little bit more emotion than her male counterparts every once in a while. But it's interesting because while that is seen as a feminine trait because women are more emotional and all that shit. Um, with Hermione, it's kind of weird because like in those small moments throughout the books of her showing those emotions, it's not like torn down and it's not like belittled or really villainized or shown bad in a bad light. Really, I feel like most of the time. And also, the whole thing of women can't be leaders because they're too emotional. I also feel like there's Hermione becomes a minister of magic, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so like it's an interesting because like we see someone like Cho and like Lavender and
Mm-hmm.
and like just women who are just so emotional that it's seen in such a bad light. But I guess with Hermione, maybe the author is trying to portray that there's like a certain level of emotional that is acceptable.
Well, perhaps the problem isn't necessarily emotion. It's more about fixation on appearance and grooming, or like fixation on exteriority. Like,
Yeah,
cho-
that's
like,
possible.
like Hermione's okay being emotional because she's not try hard. She doesn't like care or put that
She
much thought
doesn't,
into her
yeah,
physical appearance every
yeah, she
day.
doesn't really do much with her physical appearance, like at least that we hear about or know about. She doesn't seem to
Unlike
care.
unlike her foils in this instance, right? um like McGonagall is feminine, right? But there's like a good femininity in this series versus a bad femininity, right?
Right, right.
Like like she McGonagall is like an unfussy femininity versus Umbridge, who's like completely fussy down to the ruffles and the doilies.
Yeah.
Just, normal things to think about.
Yeah. So I mean that's femininity is really a widely discussed topic in the series. But you
Well,
mentioned you
but
saw a lot
so
of
is
propaganda.
yeah, so is propaganda,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna say
that's a great, yeah, that's a great segue. Um, so mostly we see the propaganda throughout this book, but need I remind you of the propaganda on book 3 against one Sirius Black, and also throughout book 4, where the propaganda was like unity amongst all wizards throughout the Triwizard Tournament, right? Like, not all propaganda is like insidious, right? Like,
right.
it's all about like messaging and what you want people to take away from it.
Yeah. Yeah, and possibly some propaganda there with like Umbridge in the fifth book, with the
Oh,
High Inquisitor and all of
yeah.
that fun stuff. Yeah. I mean, usually like the context of the word propaganda is usually like a pretty negative context. But
Mhm.
like you said, it's true. Like it's not always bad propaganda. So,
Yeah, it's all in the intent and the messaging. But speaking of bad things, let's talk about Dementors in this chapter in our section we so lovingly call Dementors and Chocolate. Helene, what did you not like, or Ted Cruz flying to Cancun did not like about this chapter?
yes, I have one, and then I have an honorable mention. So my main one is the Ministry's use of Dementors in the courtroom to incite like not only fear but like physical discomfort to the people that they are questioning their blood status. So like I'm sure that you've heard pretty much wide knowledge that when you're being interrogated by the police, usually interrogation rooms are kept extremely cold.
Yes.
Usually they go hours without letting the person they're interrogating have water or food,
Yeah, they
or
don't want you to be
yeah,
comfortable.
they want to make you uncomfortable because they think that that's going to get you to spill your secrets faster, basically. Because if you're comfortable, why would you feel like you need to tell them the truth? Uh, so, and I think it's also supposed to be like a omen of like, oh well, if you fucking did this, like this is what's in store for you. Like this is what's gonna come. Like this is just the beginning. It's gonna get worse, right? And
Yeah.
so obviously this was mainly it was just the ministry doing their version of this, but with like actual magic and like physically imposing the feeling of despair and fear and cold and hopelessness and depression on people that are already scared out of their fucking minds just walking into it.
Okay, I need to say this. So your
Yeah.
Dementor is literal Dementors. Just saying.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh my god. Yes. Okay. So I hadn't thought about that, but you are correct. However, my honorable mention is not.
Okay, I
um,
just
no.
I
Yeah.
thought you hadn't like noticed it yet, but I was
No.
like,
Did,
let me double
did
check.
no. Completely did not notice that. Good call out. No, and then my honorable mention is, I mean, I feel like it's impossible to have a chapter with Umbridge in it and not have her be a Dementor because, like, she's a fucking nightmare. But my honorable mention is Umbridge and her use of Moody's eye to spy on her employees. There are lots of things here. First of all, spying on your employees, shit, don't do that. That's so crappy. Like,
Yeah.
don't hire people if you can't trust them. Like, trust your employees to do their work. Do not spy on them. That is bullshit. But then also, obviously, linking her to Moody's murder. Obviously, she had something in recovering his body because they couldn't, like, the Order couldn't find his body after the attack at the beginning of the book. So obviously, Umbridge had something to do with finding and or recovering his body. And not only did she do that, but she defiled his body by taking his magical eye and using it for a nefarious purpose. So, fuck you.
Well, my big fuck you is to the continued use of the word of the color pink as a nefarious color. As a
Yeah.
lover of all colors, but especially the color pink, I feel called out and demonized.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. So, anyhow, let's talk about chocolate or what we actually like in this chapter. Helene, do you have a chocolate recommendation this week?
I I don't think I do.
Tisk tisk. I don't either.
Oh, well, okay. We'll try to be more exciting next week. Sorry, guys.
Sorry, guys. All right. What's your chocolate this week?
Honestly, I'm gonna say I had a really hard time. I was sitting there thinking about it for a while, and I was like, "Can I just say I don't have one?" Because it's not a happy chapter. It's not a great, like. There's not much to like cling on to in this chapter. But I did end up thinking about it, and I decided that Harry as Runcorn, his masquerading as Runcorn in the Ministry, attempting to use this like newfound, like unexpected power and influence that he has as Runcorn in the Ministry, um, to do like what little good he could do with it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he thought, like, consciously thought about this, or if this was like really his what he was intending to do. But like I kind of saw it as like, oh, like like the Ministry people like fear this guy. Like, this guy is respected, he is feared. Like, I can tell people to do something and they will probably listen to me. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, at the end, like, even though it didn't end up working for him in his favor, at the end he was like trying to save all of these Muggleborns that were being questioned when he attacked Umbridge and Yaxley and like tried to get out of the Ministry with them. And there was like a whole group of them, and at the end he was basically like, unseal the exits, let us out. These people have been, just that, like, these people are fine. They've been freed. They're not under any arrest or anything. Like, just listen to me. And I just thought that, like, at least trying to do that was nice. So
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Mine was less noble and more self-serving for me as a reader. And it was like that moment where Ron's fake wife asks him why he's so wet, and he goes, "Water?"
that was
Or
cute.
is it Arthur Weasley? One of those two. One of the two asks him like, "Why are you so
Yeah,
wet?" And he's like, "Water." And
yeah.
I
I mean,
just
my one of the chocolates that I thought about was Ron almost accidentally calling Arthur dad in the
oh
elevator.
yeah, that's cute. That's cute.
Just because it was like, oh, that's cute. Um, but if I'm being completely honest, I just didn't want to have Ron for a chocolate again, so I didn't go with that one.
Helena Carp.
Because, first of all, okay, I don't want every single chocolate in this book to be like, oh, this one tiny light-hearted comedic relief option because this book is depressing and Ron is the comedic relief and no one else is providing this. So it's just default, okay? Like Ron is the comedic relief, and so
No, you just don't want to admit that this is helping you change your opinion about one Ronald Weasley.
I mean, okay, so what I will say is I can understand, like, reading this book again, obviously. I think I understand why people like him more now, because he does provide, like, that lightness in, like, the really dark, heavy times. Like, he, like, can make you smile when it's, like, really tough. But that, just because I understand why other people might like him more, that that does not necessarily make me like him more. I think, like, I appreciate the comedy, I appreciate the giggle, the laugh, the lightness, but like that is not that's not like a character trait of his that like I'm going to fundamentally change my opinion on him because of. You know what I mean?
All I heard was you're changing your mind. I don't care
No.
what you said. Anyhow.
I'm changing my mind about how I view, like, the way that people view him. I'm not changing my mind about him.
All right. That being I'm just going to like take like certain things out of your quotes and just string them together and be like, Helene said she actually likes Ron Weasley now.
Fake news. Fake news.
All right, Helene. Every week we ask our listeners a question, and Helene, you had a really dark and interesting question this week for our listeners.
Yeah, I thought it would be interesting to put this question out to you guys. What do you think Umbridge thinks about in order to produce her Patronus?
What makes Dolores happy? Is it ruffles?
Yeah.
Is it doilies?
Yeah. Cats? Is it torture? Is it being superior to others? There's lots of options.
Pink pamphlets, with gold lettering. Who knows?
Right. Exactly. I think it's kind of disturbing that she can produce a Patronus in the first place, but she can, and it was very obviously on display in this chapter. So, what do you think motivates that Patronus?
That is a great, dark, and twisted question, and your brain is a nightmare, and I love it. Anyway. This hellscape of a life is a nightmare. So, what we do to escape it is we consume media. So, what media have you been consuming, Helene?
Sorry, the way that you introed this is going to make the media I've been consuming like. Anyway, I'm escaping this. I'm escaping this hellish nightmare of life by watching one of the most disturbing pieces of media probably to ever exist. This week,
this was quite unintentional, and I love it.
Yes. So this week, I watched Dahmer.
Is this the Zac Efron Netflix thing?
No, Zac Efron was Ted Bundy.
Okay. Sorry, I apologize to everyone everywhere. I don't apologize to anything.
I'm a huge serial killer, like interest. I'm not a fan because that's a weird word, but I'm very interested in serial killers. I'm not a serial killer. I will tell you that right now.
Yeah, that's like
do not come after
perfect way to convince me that you are not indeed a serial killer by saying,
although fun fact,
that you are not one.
Fun fact, the majority of serial killers are Virgos. Fun fact. And I am a Virgo, so, but that is not helping me. Anyway.
Again, telling me things that do not help your case. Continue.
So anyway,
the documentary about you, I hope they excerpt some audio from this podcast.
Sure, yeah, that would work. So the full title on Netflix is Dahmer. It's Monster: The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. It came out last weekend, starring Evan Peters as Jeffrey Dahmer. It's a limited series. And it's really interesting because it actually attempts to really actually focus on the victims, rather than, you know, the crimes, but the victims and their families and what they had to deal with both during, um, and then after. And it's kind of, in a way, told somewhat from the perspective of his next door neighbor. Obviously, there are parts of it that, like, she would never have been able to know. Like, there are parts that are told directly from his perspective, but a lot of it is kind of, he basically lived in a apartment building when he was murdering all these people. Which, can you imagine? Like, you have neighbors. How do you? He's like, and he is literally, like, not only drugging and murdering these men, but he is cutting them up, dissolving their bodies in acid, but only the parts that he doesn't decide to eat.
This is the grossest thing ever.
I know, yes. Jeffrey Dahmer is fucked up. Oh, and also it is noted that he was a gay man, and his victims were solely, well, maybe not solely. I think maybe he had like one or two white victims, but his victims were mainly black and brown gay men. And so they were also, it was also questioned whether or not it was a hate crime. All his crimes were hate crimes, but he was a cannibal, which is just fucking disgusting. And the show was like nothing I'd ever seen before. I watch a lot of true crime, and I'm very, like I said, I'm very interested in, like, you know, the psyche of serial killers and sociopaths and psychopaths, and kind of understanding like what's going on, and like just kind of seeing the extent of what humanity can, like what one human could possibly do to another human, like just all of that stuff just intrigues me. I know it's weird, but, and this show, like, first of all, I couldn't binge it. I could only handle maybe 2 episodes at a time before I had to stop and go watch something else, lighter, usually something lighter, to not give me nightmares. But like at times it made me like physically ill.
So, what did you have to go watch to make this nightmare go away?
At first, I tried Abbott Elementary because I'd been meaning to watch that anyway. So I was like, "Oh, I'll watch an episode of Abbott Elementary before I go to bed to like help me, you know, forget about fucking murdering and cutting people up and eating them." Um, the one thing that made me feel a little bit better, though, is I had to keep reminding myself, one, he died in 1994, so I was 1 year old when he died. So he's dead. But also, his I would have never been a victim because I am a woman, and he only killed men. He killed 17 men, in his, between like 1980 something and like 1991.
Okay.
So that made me feel a little bit better. But no, it was Abbott Elementary and Gilmore Girls were the two that I would watch to counteract the
Okay.
grossness. But like there are a lot of other people who I know that are very much into true crime and very much love this genre and could not do it. Like they tried and they just couldn't.
Yeah, I have already decided I'm not watching it, even before you talked about it.
Don't. Yeah. You really have to have a strong, you have to, it's hard. It was really tough, but I found it to be worth it. I thought it was extremely interesting and extremely well acted. Like Evan Peters, you need to go to therapy. I like the fact that you had to be in this man's head for however long this like production was going on. God, yikes. So yeah, if you are, you know, interested in the story of Jeffrey Dahmer, or you know, want to learn more about a horrific human being and the horrific crimes that he portrayed, then go watch Dahmer on Netflix.
Well, I, in contrast, do not have something nightmarish to recommend. So I
Okay, good,
have
good.
been listening to one of the best audiobooks I've listened to all year. Actually, this has been like a really great 2 weeks for me in escapist fiction, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, this isn't even the good audiobook that you were talking about the other
I
day.
know, right? Like, I'm just like, everything's a trash and it's a nightmare, but man, my media's been good. This one is titled
Yay!
Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan. And it is the story of a once actress who is now an audiobook narrator. And it's a delightful, delightful book. It made me cackle, it made me sob, and it also made me tear up from like good feelings. So like it made me feel all the feels. And
Yeah, I came across this in my search for a new book a while ago, and I saw that, and I was like, that sounds interesting. I hadn't downloaded it, but I'm glad to know that you liked it.
it is between book lovers and thank you for listening. It is now I've told Seth that the new thing that we need to do for anniversaries, Christmas, and birthdays and all of that is he has to read one book, romance book of my choice, and that is his gift to me. And those are the two that he's doing for
Like,
Christmas
because you just want to
anniversary.
like discuss it with them.
Yes.
That makes sense.
It'll make me very, very happy to discuss like really good romance books with him.
Aw, that's cute.
Well, and also, I mean, if anyone out there also wants to read this book and discuss it with me, I'd be very happy to, because it is a gem.
Aw. I mean, like I said, it was on my radar, so it's a
So
possibility.
highly recommended, Helene. It is honestly, as the SNL character would say, it is everything. It has everything. So
Yeah, that's definitely more delightful than my media.
yeah. Well, and I would say if, it is under the genre like of, romance, but not like bodice ripper romance, which there is nothing wrong with bodice ripper romance, but it's more of like modern chick lit, which I also hate this term, romance of like there's like complex relationships that the main character has with her family, with her best friend, and in comes this like stranger, that kind of book.
Yeah, that makes
It
sense.
also reminded me the parts that I really really liked, like the romance parts I really liked, reminded me of Bridgerton, Francesca's
Ooh.
story. So I thought you might
Ooh.
really like it.
Speaking of Bridgerton, did you see they're doing a prequel
Mm-hmm.
series about Queen
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited about that.
There was like a little first look clip that is out. That was cute.
Yeah, it was really cute and I liked it. So I was like, yes, yes, yes. Netflix, bring it. And also, I need to know when Colin and Penelope's season is dropping. Please, soon.
Well, it looks like they're either in the late stages of production or in post production. So, hopefully in the next few months, maybe by like early 2023, that would be nice. Maybe spring of 2023. That's my guess. As someone who works in entertainment, that would be my guess.
Well, thank you for that insight. I remember season 2 came out while I was getting ready to deliver Olivia Penelope Wilson. So I would hope.
Oh, you know what? I bet you it comes out just now. This is the strategist in me thinking. I bet you they release it on Valentine's Day weekend.
Ooh, if you're right, I would be so excited for that.
Yeah, put it down. Write it in your Shanshu prophecies. That's a Buffy reference. Well, Angel reference. And and come back to it because I have been right about these things before. Like I guessed the title to the third Fantastic Beast movie like way in advance, like over a year I think before it came
Yeah,
out.
no,
Um,
you're
accurately,
you're the entertainment Cassandra,
yeah. So I would not be surprised if it came out on a Valentine's Day weekend. We'll see.
All right, so I'm holding out hope. All right, so that's it for today's episode. Please join us next time as we talk about Chapter 14 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. This one is titled The Thief.
Yes, and until then, if you happen to have enjoyed this conversation about propaganda and femininity and Jeffrey Dahmer.
One of these things is not like the other, listeners.
Yes. Please take a second to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you happen to be listening to us right now. It helps new listeners discover the show, and it really just helps. It helps the algorithm. It helps our mental health. It helps us feel better about you. So yeah, it's all good things.
Helps us feel better about ourselves, our place in life. I don't know. Things like that. Anyway.
Nothing bad can come. If you want to do one thing this week that has absolutely zero negative consequences, here you go. On a silver platter. Nothing bad can come from giving us a 5-star review. So
absolutely
take
nothing.
that with how you want. Yeah, exactly.
Well, until then, politics managed. Support this show by going to patreon.com/Occhiopolitics. Our patrons keep this show going. You can find us online at Occhiopolitics.com, and we are at Occhiopolitics on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can email us your thoughts at info@Occhiopolitics.com. Leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699. And you might just hear yourself on the podcast. Adriana Wilson is the founder and creative director of the podcast. Helene Karp is the producer and social media manager. Allison Pullman is the audio wizard and editor who makes us sound so good. Cover art and physical rewards are designed by Adriana Wilson. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are expressly their own and not representative of their employers or associates. Occhiopolitics is part of the MuggleNet family of podcasts.